So we just saw how to get started with D3 and interact with a web page. So D3's core selection module allows us to take data and apply it to a web page in a very smooth way. So one of the technologies that's going to prove really useful is rather than selecting the basic HTML elements like a body tag or so on, is SVG. So there's two technologies we'll talk about that D3 interacts with. The first is SVG, and later we'll take a look at the canvas element. But most D3 visualizations you'll see are built on top of SVG, and you can do a lot with it. So what is SVG? It stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. Right? Here's some documentation from the Mozilla Developer Network, which is where I recommend you go to look at these. And in the code here, I've got a link to this documentation. So here we can go in and kind of see what's here for SVGs. Right? We can look at the different element types that we have in SVG. So clip paths, some of the basics like a rectangle are going to allow us to build some basic shapes into our visualizations. We can see which attributes a rectangle has, which ones it needs, right? And here's some examples. You can even open this example in CodePen. So to get started with an SVG, they're written in HTML, right? So here we can start with an SVG by just adding an SVG tag. It's an XML-based graphic, as you can see, right? And it lives right inside of the web page. So here we have an SVG. You need to give an SVG a width and a height, right? So we can give it a width and a height, right? And now we have an SVG on the page. If we want to actually add something to it, right? We can add an element like a rectangle, right? We'll give our rectangle an X position, a Y position, and a width and a height, right? So we'll give our rectangle a width 20. Height 20, right? And the automatic fill was black. So here's a rectangle in our SVG, and we can go ahead and create even more of them if we'd like, right? So we can stagger them along, and we'll end up with even more. So we can stagger some along. So we have 3 racked elements in the page. Okay, width, height 20, and we are varying the X here. So we might need to give these as a fill, right? So we can set the fill color, right? And this is the basic way to interact with an SVG. We can go back and create any elements that we want. And here's the rectangle. We can go ahead and create circles if we want. There are group tags. And there's the basic marker types that we'd want. So from these, circles, lines, squares, we can build any type of visualization. And we're not going to do it by hand, but if you wanted to, you could build an SVG visualization by hand. One other thing to note about SVGs is they are a vector graphic format, so they'll work at any scale. So if we were to zoom in on this page, it'll remain crisp because it's a vector image. And just like we saw with D3 selecting and appending body elements, right? We can go ahead and do that here as well. So we can use D3, right? We can select our SVG in the page, right? And we can append, here we can append a circle, right? And circles are going to have the attributes of CX for their X position, right? So let's give it 50 in X, and we can give it a CY, right? And then the only other thing it's going to need is a radius, right? So set the radius to be 5, right? And we've added a circle to our visualization, and there it is. Great, so that's getting started with SVG, and we can start to add more and more complex shapes and really build any of the visualizations that we've seen in D3 on top of this.